March 2025. I will now start the fire evacuation procedure notices. There is no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the committee staff and leave by the exit nearest the large screen at the front of the room. Proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. Webcasting. We are recording the meeting this evening. The webcast will be transmitted live to the Council's YouTube page and will also be available on the Council's website following the meeting. Generally, the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering St George's Suite and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and training purposes. Housekeeping. Before we begin this evening's meeting, I would like to remind members to speak directly into the microphone to enable those present and those watching online to be able to hear the proceedings. Could I also please ask those present to ensure their phones are turned to silent for the duration of the meeting. Finally, I would like to remind members of the Council's adopted Code of Conduct, of which you agreed to and are expected to adhere to. I will now move on to the business of tonight's agenda, and in doing so, I take this opportunity to remind you that any questions are relevant and concise. Item number 1. Yes, Councillor Myers.
Due to being diabetic, I have to change my set at some point, which means my phone will have an alarm going off when it needs to happen. Okay.
Absolutely fine. No worries whatsoever. Thank you. Right, item number 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Apologies from Councillor D. Harrison.
Oh, could you say into the mic? Is that all right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor D. Harrison.
Any further apologies? Councillor Ball?
Thank you, Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Brockman as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sargent?
Councillor Danny Lawrence.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Any other further apologies for absence? I'm looking around the room. No, thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to be made by members? Oh, yeah, the county council, the two-hatted, I will take en bloc for all county councillors present. Thank you for that. Any other declarations of interest from members present? Thank you. Okay, item number 3. The electoral cycle. I call upon Councillor Callaghan, Leader of the Council, to present the report for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following a decision of this Council in January to consult on the prospect of moving to all-out elections, the Council was asked to reconvene tonight in an extraordinary meeting to consider the outcome. Since then, the Secretary of State has moved to put Essex on the devolution priority programme, and Basildon Council will cease to exist from May 2028. Some will argue that this renders the decision to take this vote as meaningless. It will be suggested that just as the county council elections were postponed in 2025 at the Conservative Party's request, that the elections in 2026 and 2027 in Basildon would also be a pointless exercise. Now, whilst it is true that it is not in the gift of this council to determine whether or not an election is cancelled, I do believe that providing residents and officers with clarity as quickly as possible is to be welcomed, and it is also crucial to ensuring that the MTFS reflects any savings from such a decision. Now, as members know, the Boundary Commission for England conducted a review of our electoral boundaries in 2023. Their recommendation then was clear. Basildon should move to all-out elections from May last year. Initially, we chose not to implement this change, but as a new administration, we felt it was important to consult with residents, businesses and stakeholders who are directly affected by these decisions. The consultation ran for 6 weeks, and I'm here tonight to confirm the results. 62% of respondents supported the move to all-out elections, only 38% were opposed. I regret that such a small number of residents took part in the consultation, but as I heard from a Wickford resident on Tuesday at my latest Meet the Leader event, the public are exhausted by the constant politicking on Basildon Council, and they just want us to get on with it. Mr Mayor, we currently elect in thirds here in Basildon, which means that every year part of the council is in campaign mode, fighting elections and then immediately gearing up for the next one. It is a system that leaves no room for serious long-term decision-making, as we have seen time and time again. Let us be honest with ourselves. The system of elections by thirds is inefficient and it is disruptive. It's a system that forces us into a constant cycle of campaigning, and it's one that undermines our ability to focus on the big picture that matters most to our residents. You don't need to be a political expert to see that this system is not delivering for Basildon. It has held back progress, particularly in areas like regeneration, housing and the local plan. We've all seen the results. Stagnant town centres, unfulfilled housing promises and a lack of leadership when it comes to addressing our community's needs. The constant political instability has bred a lack of confidence in the council and ultimately in our ability to get things done. But with whole council elections, that can change. A clear 4-year cycle means we can focus on delivering real results for Basildon instead of being stuck in perpetual election campaigns. It gives us the space to plan properly, to make decisions based on long-term needs and to deliver on the promises we've made. And let's not forget the cost savings. Running elections every year is expensive. It costs taxpayers money that could be better spent on local services. By switching to whole council elections every 4 years, bringing us in line with the county council and neighbouring boroughs like Chelmsford and Castle Point, we will save money. Money that can go into improving services, regenerating our town centres, building homes for our young people and investing in our infrastructure. We are trying to be smarter with our resources and making sure we're focused on delivering for the people of Basildon. Mr Mayor, the results from the consultation also reflect a wider desire for stability. When we speak to local businesses, investors and stakeholders, one thing is clear. They all want certainty. They want a council that is focused on the future, not just on the next election. By taking this decision, we'll demonstrate to investors and residents alike that we are serious about stability and delivering on our promises. As for the critics who worry about the loss of fresh ideas from new councillors, let's be honest, we've had plenty of new councillors come through the system. The problem isn't fresh ideas, it's the constant churn that prevents us from ever seeing them through to completion. We need the space and stability to put those ideas into action. So, Mr Mayor, I ask my fellow councillors to join me tonight in supporting this proposal so that we can start to deliver for Basildon.
Thank you, Councillor Callahan. The matter is now open for debate. Do I have any speakers? Councillor Schrader.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have before us a deeply problematic report. It makes clear at the top of page 10 it's a legislative requirement to consult on any change to the electoral cycle, and this consultation is then supposed to inform our decision. So what's the problem? Well, firstly, it says on page 16, the consultation took place over 6 weeks from 27th of February 2025 until 9th of March 2025. Now, my maths isn't great, Mr Mayor, but I reckon that's only a fortnight. Secondly, this must have been the most clandestine consultation in history, even allowing for the tedious glut of them this council sticks out all the livelong day. I don't know a single person who saw it. I completely missed it, and I was actively looking for it. I didn't see it promoted anywhere on the council's socials or emails. I couldn't find it on the website. Councillors weren't sent a link to it or anything. It was spectacularly well hidden. That's borne out by the fact we received only 42 responses, or 0.02% of the electorate. But it's worse than that, Mr Mayor, because the report also tells us on page 20 that 10 of those were councillors. I suspect the administration front bench. Why are councillors responding to a public consultation that's supposed to help inform our decision and front-loading it with their own preconceived notions, if not to deliberately skew the results? The report goes on to tell us, rather breathlessly, that, quote, anywhere between 44.88% and 75.12% support a change. But I ran this past a professional data analyst of my acquaintance. He tells me with such a small sample size, support could be as low as 43%, but to get within a margin of error of about 5%, you'd need a sample of at least 368. We're nowhere near that. The margin here is over 15%, which is huge and totally unreliable as a measure of support. The sample can't credibly be regarded as representative or a decent cross-section of the electorate. Councillors make up less than 1% of the electorate, yet account for nearly 24% of respondents to this consultation. I'd be interested to know the level of support among non-councillors and how different that is, but the report doesn't tell us. Ultimately, it comes down to this. My data analyst friend tells me that, for example, the very expensive survey analysis software he trains people to use wouldn't even display these results. It would automatically redact the data because the sample size makes it statistically irrelevant. No serious organisation would base a commercial decision on this kind of data. You might as well flip a coin. Under those circumstances, Mr. Mayor, I'm shocked the administration ploughed ahead and brought forward a recommendation on the back of such an obviously flawed process. They've not unreasonably been pretty self-congratulatory about the large number of responses to some of their recent consultations. Yet a consultation on changing the electoral cycle is conducted with less shrift than a product satisfaction survey on the back of a packet of crisps. We know they can do better. They know they can do better. It's telling that they haven't. I simply say this to colleagues. This isn't a trivial matter. Ultimately, we're talking about the franchise, about people's right to vote, to elect this council, and proposing to alter it for the first time in 45 years. That's why the Act requires us to consult, but it isn't a consultation worthy of the name. We can all see that. So I also remind members, this isn't just about changing the electoral cycle from 2028. I refer members to the report that went to Council in January. It says, and I quote, if a two-thirds majority of councillors support the change to whole council elections, yada, 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 the council would inform the Secretary of State and request that the necessary arrangements are made to remove the elections by thirds due in 2026 and 2027. And to that end, Mr. Mayor, I do have an amendment that I have provided to the monitoring officer, which I would like to move. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Do you have copies of the amendment for people to peruse?
Is that normally the practice?
Yeah. Hold on. Thank you. Yeah, have they been copied? Have we got copies at all?
I've got one or two copies.
Okay. Would you like to read out the amendment, and then I'll allow you to speak on it as a mover of the amendment? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my proposed amendment would read, it would amend recommendation number 2 specifically, that council formally resolves to move to whole council elections from May 2028, and will request that the Secretary of State allow the elections by thirds currently scheduled for 2026 and 2027 to go ahead as planned. Do you want me to speak to the motion now, or? I will speak now then. So to be clear.
Before you do you have a seconder?
More than I know what to do with, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to be clear, if we vote for this tonight, unamended, we will be voting to scrap next year's elections. Now, I don't know about you, but people I represent are about as cheesed off as they've ever been about the cancellation of this year's local elections. Vote to scrap next year's and the years after. You won't be able to blame county. It's on you. You'll have to justify to your voters, and if all you've got to hide behind is this half-hearted fig leaf, God help you. I have my own views about the merits and demerits of electing by thirds, but people voted last year on that basis, and I regard that as a sacred covenant with the voters. I say to particularly the opposition colleagues in the Wickford Independents, who are in a particularly crucial position here because this needs 2/3 to get passed. So it'll only go through if you guys vote for it. And I'm not saying vote against whole council elections. What I am saying is do it right. You can all see this consultation is insufficient. You need a decent sample to achieve at least a 5% margin of error. So you can have the reassurance that you're properly informed of the disposition of your voters as the Act requires and those who elect us deserve. So whatever you think about the principle of all-out elections, I would have deferred the whole item to rerun the consultation. But if the administration are not minded to do that, I do think that at the very least, whatever you think about the principle of electing by thirds, elections in 2026 and 27 should go ahead. You don't hold an election and then rewrite the rules of the contest after the results have been declared. That's not cricket. That's not how we do things. And I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Councillor Bagger, you to second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Personally, I have a view with regard to the whole year elections, but that's not the matter at hand, really. It is, as Councillor Schrader has said, it is the issue of the cancellation of 2026-2027 elections. Now, I was in this chamber last week ago today, I think it was, at Cabinet, where in response to me, Councillor Callaghan stood there and said categorically, there will not be a cancellation of the elections in 2026-2027. That's what he said to his Cabinet on webcast. So I believe that Councillor Callaghan has integrity, and when he says something, he means it. So on that basis, I can't see why he would not support this amendment, because it lays out in black and white exactly what he promised and said at Cabinet last week. When it comes to consultation, I've been contacted by numerous people in Billericay. Now, these folk are all very, very good at responding to consultation. They're all educated people. They, at times, actually respond to consultation from Britain. And they've said, I've done some research, one of them says. I'm reasonably confident that the consultation was not communicated publicly. I checked council emails, X, Twitter, Facebook, and the council's website. The primary ways that the council communicates. I've also spoken to a number of people who are usually only aware of what's happening at the council, and whilst they knew the consultation was being mooted, they saw no communication either. And many other residents have made that point. I think Councillor Schrader has eloquently said what the problems with the consultation are. And this is where it's not what's said, it's what's not said. Councillor Callaghan, when he stood up and did his speech, said 68%. He didn't say 68% of 42, which is a completely different context. He didn't say, oh, and 10 of those were our councillors, which is a different context. So, in fact, in all, in the entire residents of this borough, 32 residents responded. Now, this is from an administration that has stood up time and time again and clapped themselves on the back about how great they did with the consultation on waste, how great they did with other consultations, and quite rightfully, because they got good response. So if you want a good response and be able to clap yourself on the back, that's absolutely very well and good. But don't then come to a full council meeting and say, well, we had 32 responses, that's okay. And it's for that reason that if this does not, for some reason, go through, if this amendment is not supported, I will be exhorting the public to support me in doing a judicial review of this process and actually seeing where we go with that, because the public deserve their right. One of the key principles of local government is local government elections. And local government elections serve two purposes. They inform councillors locally how well the council is doing locally, and they're a litmus test for how the public feel about the performance of national government. And that's being taken away from them if we don't support this amendment. They are having their democratic right to have a say in the running of this council and the running of and their statement on how they feel the country is being run taken away and deprived from them, and putting people in power that don't have a proper mandate anyway because they're only propped up by the independents to continue for a further 3 years running this council. And that is wrong. Now, I understand that you might be scared of reform, you might be scared of the Conservatives, you might be scared of the election results next year. I get that. And I understand that this is a way of actually trying to circumvent being tested and having the... Because if you're not scared, then why not vote for this amendment? Have the elections next year, let the public have their say, let's see how it goes. It is a democratic principle, and you are actually just driving a sledgehammer through the democratic process here, as you've done in the past, and as you will continue to do so if you are let to stay in power. So I can't see any reason, especially after what Councillor Callaghan said at Cabinet last week, why you would not support this amendment. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Callaghan, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, they are single-handedly the most stupid set of speeches I have ever heard councillors make in this state. And honestly, there's been a fair few since 2012. Let's just get this straight, right? I am not God. I know they think I am, but I'm not, right? I do not have any power to cancel any election in this borough or any other borough. The only person who can do that is the Secretary of State. So voting tonight on whether or not to move to all-out elections from May 2028, that is all we are doing. We are not voting to cancel elections in 2026 and 2027 because there's not a single person in this room who has the power to do it. Do I think the government should cancel the elections? Yes, I do. Because I don't think we should waste almost £500,000 of public money to elect people to a 2-year and a 1-year term to an authority that is being abolished in May 2028. What they haven't explained, and I don't know why, but what they haven't explained is that in May 2026 we are going to be having elections to the mayoralty, and in May 2027 we're going to be having elections to the brand new councils. So they want people to literally be going out in May 2027 to vote on councillors to serve on a new council and councillors to serve on an existing council that's being abolished. And they want us to pay for that. They want taxpayers to pay for it. It's hard to see, isn't it, why they were £3 million overspent as an administration. Yeah. Honestly, they do not understand how finance works. And I don't know what is more unbelievable. The idea that we are to vote on an amendment to protect the status quo, or that Councillor Schrader has a friend. Right? I'm not sure what is, giving us his best John Curtis tonight with his psephology. I mean, what a load of nonsense, right? I know that it was an alien concept in the Conservative group, right, that councillors could live in stock and still represent people on Basildon Council. But over here, we all live in the borough. Yeah. We're all residents. So why is it any less important for residents who are also councillors to take part in consultations? I say to Councillor Schreider, have you not taken part in the local plan consultation? Has any of your family? But now, all of a sudden, you can't take part in a consultation if it's to do with something you don't like. There's a pattern that develops here with the Conservative group. When they don't like the result of a consultation, it's corrupt, it's bogus, it's fraudulent, and we should rerun it. They don't like the result, rerun it. They said they had no idea that it was going on. They sat in the room and voted on a motion to start the consultation, and now they're telling us they didn't know that there was a consultation. We are none the wiser as to whether or not they are in favour of all-out elections or not in favour of all-out elections. The motion or the amendment that they've put forward is not really an amendment, because it is asking the government to do what the government is already doing, which is to have elections in 2026 and 2027, which is the point I made at Cabinet last night, or last week rather. We have elections in 2026, we have elections in 2027, until such time as the Secretary of State says to us, don't do that. Would I like to bank the £500,000 saving in the MTFS so we can spend it on putting the street lights back on across Basildon? Would I like to spend the £500,000 on putting more pride teams on the streets of Pitsea and Leyden? Would I like to put it into a first-time buyer guarantee scheme for first-time buyers, a mortgage guarantee scheme? Yes. These guys want to blow it up the wall on paying councillors to sit in a room for 12 months to a body that will not exist anymore. I mean, it is such an irresponsible use of the public's money. And I would just say to members tonight, I am not able to cancel. I don't know how many times. I know, you know, somebody over there might be intellectually challenged, but let me just say, I cannot cancel elections. I cannot be any more explicit about that. The only thing that we as a council, and I as the leader of the council, can do is put forward a proposal that the Boundary Commission of England told us to opine on at this time last year, and ask people in this chamber whether or not from May 2028 Basildon Council should move to whole council elections. And let me just say finally, if you think for a minute that on this side of the chamber we are at all worried about the Conservative Party electorally, you are seriously barking up the wrong tree. And if you think that we're worried about taking on a group of thugs and bluffers in reform, you are seriously wrong. We will have an election next year, irrespective of the result here. We will have the mayoral election next year. As things stand, and whether we vote for this tonight or not, we will have council elections until such time as we're told not to, and I look forward to taking the Tories and reform on at the Parliament.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've heard both sides of the argument purely on this amendment. Many of us would like to speak on the substantive. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, can the amendment be put to the vote so we can deal with the substantive, please?
No, I'll allow a couple more speakers on the amendment and then we'll go to the substantive. If you wish to continue on the amendment, then that's fine.
Thank you. Well, I'll use this opportunity to speak on the amendment and substantive. I think members will recall that ballot paper, because we were allowed to cast a vote as councillors. And it said you have to elect 3 people. It doesn't say the one who gets the lowest vote gets a 2-year, the one who gets not so many more gets 3 years, and the one who gets the most gets 4 years. I've got a 4-year term, so I'm laughing either way. But when they was counting the votes for Langdon Hill ward, I recall your former colleague Chris Allen was sort of this colour of life coming to his face when the former chief executive went, I think we need a recount. And I looked at this former chief executive and went, what is that? He went, oh, the gap between first, second and third, there's less than 5, 6, 11 votes. It's very small. Oh, what about fourth place? Oh, 1,100 votes. Don't need a recount. So the people of Langdon Hills ward, for example, where first, second and third place is cigarette papers apart. So they wasn't told that each person they was electing was going to suddenly have a 2-year term, a 3-year term, because when everybody votes in a local election in Basildon, you know they have a 4-year term. This is why people look at the candidates, they want to talk to the candidates, they want to suss out the candidates and decide whether that person merits a 4-year term. This is what this is about. You heard from the opposition about percentages of people getting involved with this consultation. Now, when we was dealing with the boundary changes, I made some constructive criticism, saying that we could make some boundaries a lot better, or some numbers were out, but me and my colleagues, and I'm sure the Labour group didn't as well, cast aspersions that these boundaries are rigged, they're being gerrymandered, salamandered, which is an American term, if anyone follows US politics. it was done straight. But when you look at the small numbers, far, far smaller than this consultation, and those comments were taken on board by the Local Government Boundary Commission for England, a government quango, and that was accepted and put into this. So did anyone back then say, oh, well, we can't change the boundaries because so few people participated? No. Everyone had their chance, and as the leader said, it was agreed to have a consultation, and if members don't wish to participate, don't want to find out, don't want to share it on social media, that's up to them. It is a free country. But the reality is, when I sat at County Hall, when the Conservative group were making the positive speech for unitarisation of this county, I mean, it said in the officer's report, it's unfortunate that most terms will be extended longer than what was envisaged, but it's about delivering better services for the taxpayer. And one final point that politicos will know, whether you're in power or in opposition, is those magic 10 weeks around election. Once you're at Purdo and you've got casework, the officers are polite, you know, things slip, things don't get done, the officers know, and I don't wish to cast aspersions, but it's the way with most authorities. Those 4 weeks afterwards, when us councillors are getting recovered, getting our lives back on track and taking on casework. So we lose a fifth of the council's productivity every time we have annual elections. Fifth of our productivity. That makes you think though, doesn't it? And then we're going to obviously hear from the Tories about, oh, it's undemocratic. Well, maybe they should tell their Tory colleagues who still run some councils. Like, the nearest one I can think of is like Bromley and Bexley. They have elections every 4 years. Their council elected for a 4-year term to do their duty. So, in conclusion, when the public cast their vote last May, it told the public, you can vote up to 3 times on a ballot paper. At not one stage did it say the one who gets the most gets a 4-year term, the one who gets a bit less gets a second 3-year term, and the one who wins with the third lowest number of votes gets a 2-year term. When everybody votes, they know their councillor gets a 4-year term. That was the deal with the public when they cast their votes. I don't recall any member of the public saying, if I vote this way, will that person get a 2-year term, will that person get a 3-year term? People went in and they used their votes thinking everybody they was electing was going to get a 4-year term. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to also correct Councillor Callaghan at one point, whilst Kevin Bentley at Essex as a Conservative voted to delay elections, but also John Kent at Thurrock also voted to delay elections, who was a Labour Party. And to go through the priority list as well was also the South End councillor. Yeah, but John Kent's not here, but Thurrock's a different council and he voted for it. Thurrock. I said Thurrock. Sorry. I'd like to remind the leader here about what it actually says in the January 16th report, and I'll read it in full. I know my colleague here paraphrased. It says, the new administration would like to explore the council and public appetite for whole council elections and begin a consultation on moving the council to whole council elections in May 2028. If a 2/3 majority of councillors supported the change to whole council elections following consultation, then a resolution is carried and this moves the election cycle to whole council elections from 2028. The council would inform the Secretary of State and request that the necessary arrangements are made to remove the elections by thirds due in 2026 and 2027. This report asks councillors to give permission for the public consultation to start its recommendation and report back to the council. So, Leader, yes, you don't have the power to cancel elections. However, this document states that the council will inform the Secretary of State to make the necessary arrangements to remove the elections by thirds in 2026 and 2027. This is the argument that we're making, and the amendment that we put in to guarantee that the council to remove this from the document to say that if this gets voted through, the amendment states that the 2026 and 2027 elections will continue as planned without the council informing the Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. I have no more speakers, so we shall therefore move to the vote on the amendments. All those in favour of the amendment, please indicate. All those against? Keep it up, if you're able to. Okay. Are there any abstentions? No, no abstentions. Okay, that amendment has fallen. We now move on to the substantive. I have Councillor Baggott on the substantive. Do you wish to speak on the substantive? Are there any other indicators on the substantive? Councillor Myers, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to keep it short and sweet. So, based on the fall of the amendment and based on a document of January the 16th, this council would inform the Secretary of State and request that the necessary arrangements are made to remove the elections by thirds due in 2026 and 2027 if a 2/3 majority of this council votes for 4-yearly elections from 2028. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
I shall wait for silence. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things really to consider tonight. The first, whether you support a 4-year electoral cycle, which I think is a point where there's definitely valid debate to be had. Second, there's a pressing question around the consultation process and also what the council intends to do if this is approved tonight. I can see the case for a 4-year electoral cycle. I think there are quite powerful arguments against it, but it seems to me that it is a valid discussion to have. But if we were talking about a situation where a proper consultation had been done and there was a clear mandate from the public to go ahead and move to a 4-year cycle, and we were going to hold our elections in the normal way until 2028, as the amendment suggested, before moving to an all-out model, then I would be minded to support this. But the reason I cannot support this, Mr. Mayor, is firstly because the consultation done is woefully inadequate. It is woefully inadequate. And secondly, it's clear that the administration intends to ask the Secretary of State to suspend the elections in 26 and 27. No one seriously thinks this lot are going to get their act together on the mayoral elections by 26, and there is no chance the new authorities will be ready by 2027. It just will not happen. As my colleague has already said, no serious organisation would base its decision on this kind of feedback, but let's get real. There's no need for the organisation to base it on this kind of feedback because the intention was always to go ahead with this change to the electoral cycle, whether the public wanted it or not. That's why the consultation was buried, and it's why this administration has admitted that they intended to go to the Secretary of State and suspend the local elections before the consultation even started. The smoke and gun, Mr. Mayor, the supplementary agenda of the January meeting, which makes it clear in black and white. Others have already said it, I won't repeat it, but it's there for all to see that those elections will be suspended and residents of this borough will be prevented from having their say. So when the leader responded to speeches at the meeting in January over the original consultation and poo-pooed the idea that Basildon Council had any intention of suspending local democracy for the next 2 years, it simply wasn't true. No one is suggesting he has the power to suspend elections. No one is certainly suggesting that he is God. But it is his choice to write to the Secretary of State and ask for them to be postponed, and he is going to do so. And what possible reason could there be for an administration that won a mere 23% of the last election and that represents a party that is making such an awful fist of national government for stopping the public having their say for the next 3 years? I wonder what on earth it could possibly be. They say they would like to spend half a bar on streetlights. I'm sure they would, but I'm sure they'd also much rather avoid public scrutiny. They're running scared of residents. They're running scared of the constitution of this council, and they're running scared of the democratic values of this country. The public, and I said this last time, but it still stands, the public will not forget this. There's a line in the document which suggests that perhaps the public aren't interested and this is more of interest to elected officials. But let me tell you, I suspect you are going to find out the hard way that this is not the case if this passes tonight. You need a 2/3 majority. It is within our gift to stop this. Two of you only need to stick your hands up and ask the administrator to think again. Go away, do a proper consultation, come back with a plan for a 4-year cycle that doesn't involve suspending the 26 and 27 elections, and you'll have my vote. But until then, you will not. And if you approve this tonight, you will be letting down the very people you've been elected to serve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I have 3 more speakers and then I'll round up the debate. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To be clear then, to the public that may be watching, to the press that will no doubt watch this from the leisure of their own homes later on, this administration, this Labour administration that doesn't have a clear mandate, that is propped up by independents, have had the independents now agree to suspend and stop local elections for 2026-2027, taking away the right of the local residents to have their say in how this council is done. And forget all this 2028 and councils changing and costs. We have always covered the cost of an election because that's democracy. People fought wars for the right to have elections being taken away by this administration, this propped up administration with the independents. So it is my intention to do a better consultation, I hope, than what they've done, 42 people out of the entire population of Basildon. For those that are watching, I'm intending to judicially review this decision if I get the support of residents. I'm asking for residents to come forward to actually galvanise themselves, and if they do think that it's important, which I believe they do, we will judicially review and we'll see where that takes us. Many thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As someone who represents Nevermain, here in the Conservative Party, talking about the people and judicial reviews, how badly did you get your bum slapped when you went to war with the people of Nevermain to destroy the golf course by turning it to a tip for builders' waste? £1 million it cost the taxpayer. So if you're planning to do a Ponzi scheme, get some really good legal advice. You might just have a friend who could help. What have we just been hearing tonight? If I'd have had these speeches before County Council the elections, I think Kevin Bentley would be just shaking up his head and going, I'm going to have to phone up Tory Central Office to take the whip off some people because they know I've made themselves look silly. This is about the process of Baz exit, breaking away from the County Council. And I said to Councillor who keeps it next to me, I said, we're watching a puppet show. We really are. Of Mark Francois with his acts on local government reform as he's often talking on GB News on the quiet slot. We're here to deliver for the people, not knock out 10 weeks of productivity. We can spend the night talking politics or getting on with the job. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, I beg the question be put so we can crack on with making sure that Basildon people have access to new homes. That's what the people's more worried about, right? Safety, cleaner streets, and what do they want to talk about? Oh, is it Gavin mean? Yeah. Well, people, someone said to me in the run-up to the elections, yeah, I might have a row with Gavin, but I wish he was back as leader. That's called getting things done. Action, not politics. Yeah. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, question be put, and let's crack on with making Basildon great again.
Councillor Smith, do you have a seconder? Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of the question be put, please indicate. All those against?
One more speaker. Well, I hope you're proud of yourselves. One more speaker, Adam. It's disgusting.
Thank you. All those abstaining? Okay, that motion is carried. Councillor Callahan, you have 2 minutes to wind up.
Mr. Mayor, I won't take 10 minutes. I think what we're seeing, you could be forgiven, couldn't you, for thinking that the Cheltenham Festival was over? But what we're seeing tonight is a four-horse race as to who's going to replace Andy Baggott at the AGM next month to be the leader of the Conservative group. They are queuing up one after the other to embarrass themselves. I know who my money is on, and I know who I would like to get the job, but I won't. I won't ruin their chances before that vote is taken. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Myers talks about how I am asking the government, I'm informing the government, instructing the government. I can't instruct the government to do anything. No, you didn't. You read out where you said that I was instructing the government and informing them. I've asked the government for millions of pounds in funding for Basildon. I've asked the government to back our regeneration schemes. I've asked the government for Baz exit, right? Sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. And like on this, I will make the case to them for why I think, and if we do get a 2/3 majority tonight to move to all outs, that is an election cycle that works for residents, works for businesses. And I will make the case for why I think it is a wholly inappropriate use of money to hold elections in 2026 and 2027. The government may or may not listen to me. I can't sit here tonight and say, yes, we will not have elections next year the way that they are suggesting. I am pleased that they have so much faith in me on that side of the chamber that they think I am that persuasive and I'm that good that I'm going to be able to get the government to fall into line. I think Councillor Barnes made the more considered speech, if I may say so. I hope that isn't damaging to his chances at the AGM. But I thought he made a considered speech about how he agrees with the all-outs, the substantive, the thing we're actually here talking about. Where he and I differs is that I don't think we should waste £500,000 of taxpayers' money, and he does, and that's fine, and that's his position. Councillor Baggott is trying to convince us that he'll be able to get the support of residents. All of the electoral statistics would tell us that of all the people in that group who could get the support of residents, Councillor Baggott is definitely not that person. Let us not forget that it was he who led the Conservative Party in Basildon to their worst election defeat in 25 years in this borough, and now he wants to convince his group and the rest of this borough that he is going to be the knight in shining armour to come in on the back of a JR to stop this from happening. Do me a favour. That is absolute ridiculous. They have made some, as I said, some of the stupidest speeches I've ever heard in this chamber tonight that lack any kind of real argument. What we are trying to do, as Councillor Smith rightly said in his contribution, is we are trying to give officers of this council who are going through a lot at the moment because of local government reorganisation, we are trying to give them certainty over what isn't going to happen over the next 24, 36 months. We are trying to give residents, trying to give businesses, our investors who are putting, because of us now, hundreds of millions of pounds of private sector money into this borough to build out 4 out of 5 town centres across this borough. They need some certainty about what is going to happen as well. And we are trying to do the sensible grown-up thing on this side of the chamber. And we hope, if you want to see Wickford regenerated, if you want to see Pitsea regenerated, Basildon regenerated, Langdon regenerated, if you want to see the streets cleaned up, then we need to put the money into all of those things, not into projects that elect councillors for 10 minutes. And I beg, Mr. Mayor, that we put the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. I shall now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. Oh, turned it off. All those against? And do we have any abstentions? Okay, then that vote is carried. Thank you. That closes the Extraordinary Council meeting.